everyone. How is everyone doing today? Happy Friday. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is Julie. Woo, 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 woo. Yay!
Nancy, hey, everybody. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Julie. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
I know I'm going to give everyone, you know the drill. I'm going to vamp a little bit while I give people time to hop on, just in case anyone's running late. But this is super exciting as always. You know how much I absolutely love doing these winemaker interviews, and Julie's super special. So, you know, as you guys will obviously find out, which is very exciting. But anyway, it is Happy Friday. For those of you, I hope that we have a few people who've been able to get the wines as well. I'm not sure. Yeah? Yes, we want to raise a hand here. Excellent. So the order that we're tasting them in case anyone is curious, we have got, there we are. Julia's doing the Vanna. This is our, the Ingrid and Julia Rosé right there. And then we have got the perspective, which is the Zinfandel, the Rutherford Zinfandel. Were we doing that second? I thought we were going to do that. Oh, we're going to do that second, you guys. And then we're going to finish with the Por Qué No, because Por Qué No. I love this, you guys. We're getting some animation here. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Angela, you have it in Arizona. Well, I hope your friends in Arizona are going to enjoy that with you. I'm certainly, they certainly should. And everyone, obviously, get ready to grill some delicious foods tonight to go with it if you'd like, because that would be probably a lot of fun.
A special call out to Ann Stevens too. Ann, lovely to have you on tonight. Thank you.
Yay. Yeah, so there's a few people just still kind of trickling in. So yeah, just a little bit of housekeeping again, and then I'll go right back into, you know, just admiring Julie with all of you guys. But yes, thank you all so much for coming and spending your Friday here. It is always really fun to be able to showcase, you know, wines and the people who make them. I know you all are here because you believe the same thing I do, which is that these people are incredible, and they're often underrepresented, I think, for the value that they offer us and what they give us, which is obviously wine. So very, very exciting. I did have a wonderful opportunity just a couple weeks ago to be able to visit Julie on her farm as well, which is pretty spectacular. So I do highly recommend, we'll make all this information available, but anyone heading up there would be remiss to not take a trip to their absolutely gorgeous property to taste these wines and all the other range of what she does in person. It's absolutely wonderful. So and that will happen again soon, everyone, soon. We will have that opportunity yet again. So I guess last things before I kind of get started here, if anyone has any questions, if anyone's new to this lovely event that we're doing today, go ahead and throw those questions in the chat box. I'll go ahead and keep an eye on the chat box. If you have a burning question that you're ready to ask Julie right away, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask her. But you know, this is a conversation. I want you guys to feel like you have the opportunity to talk to Julie because she's letting us talk to her. So
I have a quick question. Did I meet any of you during any one of Nancy and Sasha's winemaker or, you know, wine club pickup events at the store a long time ago? Have I met any of you? Well, anyway, I apologize if I don't recognize you if you were there, but that was certainly one of the best things that ever happened to me in visiting Southern California. I can tell you that, was going to that store. And when Sasha and Nancy, you know, made the connection again, I'm like, yay, this is great. This is the best for this time of in the world, right? So
we do miss that shop. That was a wonderful place. Thank you, Nancy, for bringing that to everyone. And here we are now, just me and Zoom, but it's all good. Oh, good. We have a few chats here also. Some people are going to be in Napa March 22nd to 24th. If you're asking if your winery will be open. which I think it will be, because you guys are doing, so let's so Julie is obviously, you guys, I have a few pictures this time too. I know I don't always have pictures, but we have some pictures today. So as we talk about Napa and we talk about Julie, let me go ahead first by doing my official introduction. Thank you all for coming. I would like to introduce winemaker Julie Johnson of Tres Sabores in Napa Valley. Julie.
Hi, everybody. I'm just typing something back to Paul, welcoming him, and that's actually it. I guess we're in a tiny little place, a tiny little back in the hillside, the lower hillside, the lower foothills on the western side of the Napa Valley, and I only have to say that we've been open now for 2 weeks. We were open rather abruptly and open now for 2 weeks, having been closed for 8. I think between all the fires and the 2 COVID shutdowns that we were closed for almost a full 6 months in total this last year, which was totally a drag, not to mention drag everybody, but you'll see a couple pictures of the dogs and meet my husband and all those other wonderful things in life. And I think that the bottom line is that people bring, and really here's the thing, when you have a vineyard, and it's beautiful and you're in partnership with nature, that's the goal. You know, it's agriculture, but you're really emulating nature as much as you can. And you're also both imagining and experiencing and sharing energy with a vineyard when you're here. That vineyard has been missing you, you know, really, truly. And the more we find out about the sharing of energy between plants and how everybody is talking to each other, microorganisms to bigger organisms, our dogs have been missing people. They've been insufferable, hoping for pets. And, you know, now the people are here, they just don't leave. They're working full time. And the energy and I think the spirit that makes a little place like this come alive when people are here is really what I'm here for. I live right here on the property. John and I live here. I've lived here since 1987. This was the first vineyard for Frog's Leap, which for those of you who don't know my bio, my first husband and I founded Frog's Leap Winery in 1981, 40 years ago. It doesn't feel like that, but 40 years ago this spring, we founded Frog's Leap. We sold our motorcycles, and with Larry Turley selling his motorcycle, we had just enough money to buy Sauvignon Blanc and Zinfandel from Spotswood Winery, one of the first vineyards in the area to farm organically. And we emulated that and moved along on that. So when we bought this beautiful property here in the Rutherford area in 1987, full of Zinfandel, we turned it organic. We certified it organic. We were the first organic certified vineyard in the whole area. And we've continued to foster and nurture these vines. So it's not only that I've been doing this for 40 years, the vines that you're going to be tasting the wine from today are 50 years old this year, which is twice the age of most Napa Valley vineyards right now. The average lifespan is only about 20 years due to various circumstances, including global warming. And so it's wonderful living on a virtually a heritage vineyard for so long and having this great relationship. Sasha, would you like to pull up the map?
Yes,
now I know
you read my mind.
So I know. Oh no, that's like me doing the.
This is a beautiful picture of Julie. It's just so beautiful and epic. But here's the map of the Napa Valley AVAs. So you guys.
Yeah. And just to give you an idea about where we are, if you look in Rutherford and look to the left, there's a little in the middle of Rutherford. There's a little looks like a little arm or a little handle that goes right there. That's Bear Canyon, which is right behind us. To our immediate south is all of the Inglenook Estate. To our immediate north is not a whole lot, really mountain, and in fact this year mountain that burned, unfortunately. But we are tucked into those western foothills with a little bit of a rise, so that there's a slope and great drainage for the grapes. The other important thing is that we're surrounded, in back of us to the west is the Mayacamas Range with Mount St. John, 2,400 feet. So in the middle and late period, in the harvest period, our vineyard is in shade by about 4:30, 5:30 in the evening, which really, really helps. Tres Sabores means three flavors in Spanish. The vine, the terroir, the place, and the good company around the glass. Terroir, among those three things, everything is important, but for the purposes of talking about where we are and the terroir of this wonderful sloped little foothill of a vineyard, tiny little vineyard, we're 35 acres, 12 in grapes on a little sloped vineyard in the Western Hills. So it's Western foothills. And so it really is a very special place that has its own little, I almost call it a lab. It's an alluvial fan, a little canyon, with very deep, well-drained soils in the middle and very sparse soils on the sides and practically no soil at all on the 30% slopes that surround us.
And what's the makeup of the soil? I'm sorry, what's the makeup of the soil that mostly?
That's a great question. The soil is mostly, we've done so many core holes.
Yeah.
The soil is a variation of the theme of loam. So at the very bottom of the vineyard, we have 8 acres of Zinfandel. At the very bottom of the vineyard, it's very light soil, coarser, grainier, not sandier, just grainier, more well-drained, lower nutrition. Although there's a lot of microbiological diversity down there. As you move up the slope, there's more clay in the loam. And so one of the things that means is that for us, we noticed many years ago now, that the grapes ripen going from the bottom to the top. It takes longer, there's more vigor in the soil, so they ripen later as they go up. So we end up picking our 12 acres of grapes about between 9 and 12 different times. We might as well be in Burgundy, right? With picking little half acres of things here and there, because that's kind of how we pick. The first wine that we're going to talk about today, in fact, the Rosé. The Rosé is the result of picking through the entire 8 acres of Zinfandel an early harvest. We go in and we touch every vine. Now, to begin with, if you're hand working the vineyards, you're in there and each vine is like got 20 touches from somebody, from all the way from pruning right now, all the way through trimming and pushing and tucking and trimming and fining and perfecting those vines. Along about the middle of August, we go in and we do a harvest, essentially a pre-harvest. Mm-hmm. You could almost call it a late green harvest. Yeah. And pull the shoulders on the Zinfandel off for Rosé, or we'll pull the entire harvest off of one or another vines that might be expressing its old age. We definitely have virus in the vineyard, like every old vineyard does. And from year to year, there's a little different expression. So we'll take those off too, rather than waiting for those grapes to ripen much, much later in the season. Yeah. Mainly because with Zinfandel, of course, there's the big time danger of rot. The longer these they're tough cookies, Zinfandel.
Zinfandel, yeah.
They're also very thin skinned. So they are subject, even an 1/18 of an inch can start some rot happening. So it's really great, because what happens with this is that we pull these grapes off first. They are about 3 or 4 points less ripe, harvested at 20 bricks instead of 24 or 25% sugar. They've got a much higher acidity and a much lower pH. So that's where that snappy, bright kind of crystal ball and a disco ball kind of effect, or you could call it a snappy sandal or a stiletto or something. That's where that brightness, that sumptuousness comes from. And from picking that first tranche of Zinfandel off for Rosé, what we're left with is a very balanced and a very happy 8 acres of Zinfandel, because that Zinfandel, you pull the fruit off, it gets essentially a big drink of water, gets more space for sunlight, gets the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks of ripening to really fully develop the phenolics. But as you taste the Sauvignon, keep saying Sauvignon Blanc, I don't know why that's on my mind. I make Sauvignon Blanc. We just bottled it. I think that's why it's on my mind.
Oh, yeah.
As you keep tasting the rosé, just think about the idea that this is a true want to emulate a Provençal style. Now, Nancy, don't laugh too much, and I have to tell you a story. Nancy Milby used to come, and you chime in, Nancy. Nancy Milby, who you all know and love, you were working on one of your first wine certifications, and you and a friend came up, and we would get up. You would get up. We'd get up early in the morning, and they would be reciting all the communes of Champagne, or they'd be reciting all the DOCs in Italy, or they'd be memorizing whatever. But before too long, one of the bonuses for me as a young, very, very novice winemaker at the time, one of the bonuses is that by about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Provençal rosés would start to come out like magic out of the cases that Nancy had brought. And so I learned to love, and I had rosé before. I mean, when I was in college, just like everybody else, I was drinking Lancers, Lancers and Matouves, and I had that obligatory little straw flower on my side table with the Lancers or the Matousse rosé with the straw flower in it. That just showed that you had such great taste. Anyway, I think I progressed a little bit. And Nancy, thank you again for helping me progress with tasting and wanting to emulate a beautiful rosé. Now, of course, this is a little unconventional because for as much as the Sutter home people made white Zin, pink Zin so popular, this is the snob's way of saying, oh, I'd like to try to make a better rosé, a lighter rosé, a rosé that's a true rosé. So we bring it in, we pick it, it goes in whole cluster to the press. The press is full of dry ice. The pan that the juice gets squeezed into, as you separate immediately, as quickly as we can, we separate the juice from the skins. We get this funny little watermelon colored, pale pink juice in the cold, keep it very, very cold. Ferment it in stainless steel, either naturally with wild yeast, just let it go, or with cultured yeast. I have about 4 lots of Zinfandel and Petit Syrah to blend together in the end. But we try to, so anyway, it's kind of unconventional because for as much white Zin as there is, there's not a whole lot of Zin and Petit Syrah. And when you look at this,
so talking about that, so we don't just have Zinfandel in there. There's a little bit of
Petit Syrah as well from the vineyard.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be looking at the flip side of this tonight with the Por Qué No, because the Por Qué No has Zinfandel, Petit Syrah, Cabernet, and just a little bit of Petit Verdot in it. A couple of things to point out. That previous picture was a little clue to the identity, because when I first made rosé, it was in 2011, and it was a very, very cold year. So usually Napa is by September, excuse me, is well into the 90s. Now these days, even into the hundreds. Back, just not too long ago, 2011, we had a very cold year, and I knew that I needed to pre-harvest some fruit in order to even have a respectable, phenolically mature Zinfandel. So that's when I went in and made the first rosé. But with Frog's Leap, of course, the history there making Zinfandel, we were always such snobs. In 1982, 83, 84, people would come to the winery and they go, oh, I thought all Zinfandel was white. And we would go, oh, no. The true Zin is Zinfandel. And, so I kind of had to play back my snobbiness to actually make a rosé. And so of course I tried. It was kind of trendy for a while, calling a true rosé pink. And forget that. Didn't work for me. I thought it was such a joke though at the time that I named it after my 2 favorite roses, Ingrid Bergman and Julia Child.
So
And if you're a rosarian, if you love flowers and you love cooking and you find out that there's a rose named after Julia Child, it's like, honey, I gotta have it. So
which one is it?
well, there are a whole combination here, but the bright red one in the middle, that's the Ingrid Bergman. And the one off to the far right, there's a Metabolist in there in the middle. The orangey one is a Metabolist, which is a really, really old Roman rose. But the one to the far right, the yellow one, that's the Julia Child. And the Julia Child is actually so full of myrrh and a bouquet and kind of spiciness. It's just like Julia Child, it's like, so I say it's a beautiful rose, it's a beautiful wine with a spicy accent. And that I think about works with the rosé.
No, I mean, one of the things I first had this rosé at LCA, and Nancy obviously brought it in, and I think this vintage is equally as just kind of vibrant. There's so much beautiful, crisp, beautiful acidity in there. The fruit has a lovely concentration to it. There's a depth that I think must come from the Zinfandel in such a different way, that kind of melange of different kind of fruit qualities coming through. But the spice is wonderful. Yeah. Just to have that like little pepper spice in the end is wonderful.
It works. So, what do we drink this with? Well, charcuterie, really, charcuterie, this is excellent with what somebody the other day called shiny meats. Has anybody ever heard that term before?
No, but
shiny meats. I think it's like salumis and other things. So I think, well, this is really fun. Fun way of referring to that. But also each year we have this little procession between Mustard's grill and my table at whatever tasting we're doing together. And Mustard's grill will bring over their ribs and I'll bring over my rosé, and there's a great matchup there for sure. But I also think just one of the all-time favorites, if you're up here, a must stop is with one of the Hog Island restaurants up here. So you can go over to the coast and cook oysters, or you can have fresh oysters here at Oxbow Market. And the brininess, just like in Provence, definitely complements the flavors and the aromas in a really nice dry true rosé. Now, of course, that's mostly Syrah and Grenache, but this is our
California rosé. It makes a wonderful, and I think you've done a great job elevating the perception of white Zinfandel to true rosé. You've done a great job with it.
You can call it pink. It's okay by me, but whatever you want to call it. But the label itself is again, continuing the joke. The joke is on me though, because so many years later we're still making it. But I label, as Nancy knows, I label all of my barrels and tanks with duct tape just to be jolly and colorful. And so I've got duct tape for wild yeast, that's leopard spot tape, and I've got duct tape for Cabernet, which of course is red, and I've got duct tape for purple duct tape for Petite Syrah. And somebody gave me this tie-dyed duct tape, which I put on the tanks and then ended up putting on the sample bottle, and then it ended up being a label. So
pretty.
It's actually a rendition of tie-dyed duct tape, which is
that's great.
a little true to my roots, and a little true to to Grateful Dead and kind of in a way a tribute to our dear friend, now just recently deceased, passed on, Amigo Bob Contasano, who's kind of the founder, in many ways, one of the founders of the organic growing movement here in California. So I don't think I ever saw him without a tie-dye t-shirt on. And here's another kind of version of tie-dye. Here's our vineyard. The vineyard, the way it looks right about now, it's actually got a little bit more mustard in it than this one, but it's all about dogs. Sometimes people think we're a dog park with wine, or a wine bar with a dog park, or I don't know. I think we should franchise it. There's two of our dogs, Kava, who's our 5th generation golden, and her mom, Boozy Rouge. And that's what it looks like today. These guys are in the middle of mustard, and the white is radish.
Okay.
for sending deep, deep roots into the soil. Right now, everything in the cover crop that we plant between the vines is starting to bloom. It's really verdant and green. We practice what we preach as far as organics are concerned.
So the cover crops that you plant are part of organic farming, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah. And you have to replant these every year. You sort of make your own mix and then sow your
Some of them. We're experimenting. One of our goals is to reduce the amount of tillage. We're all mechanical anyway. We're organic. We're not allowed to spray anything synthetic or work with anything synthetic in the vineyard. But one of our other goals is to reduce the actual tillage and increase the carbon sequestration in the soil. And cover crop and
tillage. I'm so sorry to interrupt. So
tillage is mechanically moving the soil around to reduce the weeds. Okay. So when we have essentially fancy weeds, cover crop, legumes and grasses and radishes and wild mustard and other herbs growing, peas and vetch, we have to take that down somehow so it doesn't continue to pull water out of the soil. So we farm without irrigation, which helps. So everything, just about every kind of thing kind of dies back. But we have a choice of whether we're going to mow and then till, or whether we're going to roll. Like you might have a nice little daffodil and you hit it and it goes like that. That's the same sort of idea. The whole idea is to take all this wonderful green manure and reduce it to a state where the soil, it can be easily self-composted into the soil. So it brings first, this stage is all about bringing in beneficial insects and reducing any chance of erosion, even micro erosion. It's all about helping the soil to adjust, self-adjust the nutrition in the soil and the availability of nutrition to the vines. So cover crop is really a huge tool that we need more research on, but we're trying to do it. So we have maybe 3 or 4 different mixes in the vineyard now, including a beneficial forage mix because we have bees, and the goal for bees and other beneficials is to have something for them to eat in terms of protein and drink in terms of nectar year round. So just a lot of stuff going on. This whole time sets the stage for all of the soil health and all of the flow that keeps going and going and going and going throughout the entire year through harvest. Winter solstice is really the first day. And this is that same vineyard then in full regalia, just, the bouffant hairstyles, the green hair, the green bouffant nature of, in this case, right here, Cabernet in full, I can't tell how ready we are to harvest here, but that's our vineyard on the western benchland. It's really quite magical to have this here. And these are then the vines. If you guys want to taste the Zinfandel as well, this is Zinfandel essentially ready to harvest with those really dark clusters.
So how much of your property is Zinfandel versus Cabernet?
Well, we just 12 acres of fruit. So 8 acres of Zinfandel and the balance in Cabernet plus a little bit of Petit Syrah and a really little bit, handful of vines of Petit Verdot, just enough for the Por Qué No. But the Zinfandel, like I say, 50 years in the ground and very much the beneficiary of being in the ground for that long. There is a certain adjustment point where the microorganisms in the soil and the structure of the soil and the moisture in the soil, the temperature of the soil creates an atmosphere where there's great potential for symbiosis between the roots and the microorganisms, everything happening. Ideally, it all fits together. It takes some time, but then once you get to vineyard that's this age, it's sort of glorious because it kind of takes care of itself. The roots talk to each other. Everybody is kind of organized. They know who's feeding whom, when, and who much who needs what, when, in terms of nutrition. They set up the stage for being able to access and communicate, and then this happens. With the vintage of this Zin that you're drinking is 2018, which was just about perfect in every way, right down to the nutritional composition of the grapes, because we just in 2018, right, John, we just sailed through fermentation pretty much. You set it up for success.
So 2018 partially, it was also the year. What about the climate or the weather of 2018 made it so perfect, as well as the sort of micro?
Well, it was certainly warm. Each succeeding year has been warmer than the next now, but we had a fairly decent amount of rain, so we weren't worried about not in this dry farm, non-irrigated vineyard. We weren't worried particularly about having enough soil moisture deep down in the soil. The roots go 20, 30 feet deep. So we're not that worried in a regular year about what's going to happen that way. And then we didn't have we had heat spikes, but nothing like what we've had in other years, 2010, for example, or this year, the last part of this year, in 2020, where it spiked 20 degrees in one day. Nancy, how often do you irrigate? We don't irrigate this part of the vineyard at all. The only part of the vineyard that we irrigate is up on the hillside, which is a 30% slope right behind the winery of Cabernet. It doesn't grow very well at all. There's no soil up there. It's all down here in this alluvial fan. And anyway, so the story of this Zinfandel is being able to do about half of it with a wild yeast fermentation, a natural fermentation, about half with cultured yeast, and picking the 8 acres between the Rosé and then 5 subsequent picks about 6 different times, just to try to hit that pick time at the right time for that section of the vineyard. That's what a winemaker really gets to do, is make that call. When does it all come together, both in the taste and the flavors, the phenolics that you sense yourself, and what analytically you're seeing? What's the pH? What's the acid profile? What's the nitrogen? What's the amino acid profile of the analysis that you're seeing? And then you can make that kind of decision. So I've got a tiny little lab. I have a vineyard. It doesn't take rocket science to do that. So it works.
If I may ask a question, you guys please feel free, jump in with any questions you have, especially when we talk about like organic farming. If there's anything that you're curious about or you don't know about, Julie is the person to ask. But I also am very curious about, your relationship to, I know we talked a little bit about like the Zinfandel snob thing, but like you obviously have a love for this grape in particular. And was that always the case, or did that happen when you acquired this particular vineyard? And what about Zinfandel do you love? I would like to know.
Well, I mean, what's not to like about Zinfandel? I mean, if you're drinking Fetzer Red, or, if you're drinking Hardy Burgundy, you're probably drinking, a fair amount of Zinfandel or something akin to Zinfandel. One of the mixtures of great old Italian grapes, right? So this isn't, what this isn't, hopefully to you all, to your taste bud, isn't an overripe Zinfandel. One of the things I love about Zinfandel is that it's perfectly capable of being a very cultured, very classic sort of grape. It doesn't have to have a lot of alcohol in it to have a personality. It can be a little smoky. It can be a little zesty. It can have a lot of ribbons of sweet spices running through it, in addition to this wonderful kind of olali berry, or I almost think of Zinfandel more like a cornucopia. Do you have, did we send you the little round schedule that
but it was,
any one of you can go online. Ann Noble a long time ago did this Zinfandel aromatic profile, and it lists everything from cherries to berries to cedar to anise to cinnamon to wet dog. Of course, we have wet dogs. We know what wet dogs are. Wet dogs on the bed at night. You don't want Zinfandel that smells like that. But everything else about Zinfandel is sort of this cornucopia of fruit and sweet roasted spices. I just made a mole. If you want to go online, we have a couple recipes for mole, as a matter of fact, online. And I think mole is one of my food groups, specifically because it goes so great with Zin. I think that to actually try to actually answer your question, I think the first Zinfandel I tried and just went, oh wow,
Yeah.
this is something else, was a Ridge Geyserville Zinfandel from the early 70s. And that is still predominantly Zin, although it's lots of other grapes as well, but it still has that kind of profile, and it's, wild yeast, and it doesn't have to, it's not trying to make a big statement to prove itself or to get 90 gazillion points or whatever. It just has a nice, quiet confidence about it. And it's a jazz club. For me, Zinfandel has always been a jazz club. It's surprising. It's got verve. It's got tension. It's I don't know if it's a cello or a sax, but it's got a beat. And I really have always liked that. Besides that, it was when at Frog's Leap back in the long ago days, when we bought the Sauvignon Blancs from Spotswood, they said, oh, by the way, twisting the arm, would you also like to buy our Zinfandel? And we said, oh, I guess so. But the goal was really to have some fun with it and make almost a Fetzer red wine. And if we needed a little chill, we put it in the creek behind Larry Turley's house. And
Nice.
so I think we always have really made it in a very modest, not reticent by any means, but a very modest in terms of alcohol style. Now it's been getting warmer here, and this isn't particularly modest in alcohol, but I think what comes through is, I hope what comes through is a little bit of the balance that's possible with this grape. I remember going to a store, I'm going to pick on the person who was in Arizona right now. I remember about 10 years ago going into a store in Arizona, and they had a lot of Zinfandel, and that's why the representative, the salesperson that brought me there, they had a lot of Zinfandel. Oh my gosh, the Zinfandel started at 16% alcohol, the ones that were even labeled, and went from there. And I just said, I'm sorry, we might as well turn around and go out because he's not going to like the Zinfandel. Years ago, a very famous wine writer, we were at the first Napa Valley wine auction that we showed this vineyard to, the 1987 Zinfandel. We were showing it at one of the big hoopla tastings at the Napa Valley wine auction. And a wine writer who I won't talk about, you probably all know who he is. His name ends with Blue. He came up and he went, oh, this is a wonderful wine. I just love this wine, but it's not a Zinfandel. And we go, oh, well, yes, it is. It just happens to be Zinfandel. And I think because it just wasn't so big.
Right.
But it was balanced. It was, it was lots of fun. So yes, I've always loved Zin, and but I always love Zins that are behave themselves too.
So I wanted to chat really quickly. I'm so sorry, you guys. I feel like I'm giving you all feedback. I don't know how to fix it right now, but if you're getting it, my apologies. But Dan has a question about sort of this idea. Do you ever feel pressured to convert your non-Cabernet vines to Cabernet as being the financial consideration associated with the Napa Cab? He also loves the Jazz Club description, which is a great one.
Well, first of all, I sell no wine before my accountant tells me to. My accountant has not given me permission to to spend the money or the wherewithal to spend the money to replant. I don't think I would replant to Cabernet, although when we bought this property, and a long time ago now, everybody said, oh, it's Rutherford, this is Andrei Chelyshev country. This is, we said, yeah, but Zinfandel Lane is right around the corner. Isn't that more authentic? Let's keep the Zin. We have a market for it. But I think that the bottom line is no, we didn't convert it. We converted a little bit. We grafted a little bit over, and we planted a little. I planted a little bit more, but and I've made some changes to the vineyard, I think, that make it better. I moved the canopy up So there was more air and light. It was more conducive to organic farming than we even had, 30 years ago. So 20 years ago, I made some substantial changes to the structure of the vineyard. And I think that helped the Zinfandel a lot. And sort of over the years, I've said, oh, no, I should just, am I doing the right thing? I enter my, I still put my Zinfandel in the wine auction and all of that. And it still is just pales in comparison to all the big Cabernets that get the big bucks. And I come home from one of those things and my heart is in my feet and so discouraged. And my wonderful husband or my son comes up and goes, Mom, that's okay. Yes, you are a Zinfandel estate. Yes, that is okay. And then you have people like you and Nancy kind of go, it's okay, and I love these old vines. So as long as they're not producing 4 to 8 tons per acre. They're producing 2.5 tons per acre, but we're muddling through, and we've had a lot of crises come and go, and we're still here. So I guess I'm going to stick with Zinfandel at least for a little bit longer. If I did replant, I think that we would try, because John and I have become, what have we become enthralled with? Some of the Etna varieties, some of the warmer climate varieties. And interestingly enough, a lot of people I would probably replant with Zinfandel. I think a lot of people are experimenting with planting Zinfandel Petit Syrah, Spanish varieties, Sicilian varieties, kind of exotic variety, what you might consider exotic varieties, in order to sustain vineyards here with increasing temperature events.
Yeah.
And overall increase in temperature. So I'm very lucky to be up against the backside of this hill and have shade. Mm-hmm. That really helps. The vineyard has been fairly consistent. And what this allows me to do is every year is a little bit different, because that's what you get when you're investing as a customer of mine in this particular vintage. It's going to be somewhat consistent because it's the same vineyard from year to year to year. But I think what's fascinating about single vineyard wines, and one of the reasons why I decided to leave Frog's Leap and just focus on my front yard, so to speak, was that it is pretty interesting to have that focus. This little vineyard only makes a little 500 plus or minus cases of Zin a year, and or at least that I put in the bottle as is Zinfandel. Some goes to the Por Qué No, but it's really fun to kind of say, oh, what is the vineyard's mood this year? And we had some challenges this last year. I changed. Usually we're at least half wild yeast fermentation, because Zinfandel is you go by these, we do everything in small 1 ton bins, 1/2 ton, 1 ton, 3/4 ton bins, all hand punched down. We don't ever crush the grapes. We just hand macerate them.
Here is Miguel.
Yeah, there we go. That's that's Miguel Garcia. He's been our employee and my assistant winemaker for years. And he's demonstrating how to punch down a whole bin of Zinfandel. In that case, that looks like Zinfandel to me, but it's already fermenting. You can see that it's not deep purple. It's starting to get a little bit more of, looks like a red onion, a little bit more in color. So it's already been giving up its color to the juice, it's definitely in full fermentation. Yeah. Nancy, thank you. About the fires, I didn't do I adjusted. I didn't do as much natural fermentation this year. The smoke, the phenolics from smoke are very sticky, and they bind to the chemistry in the skins. And so anything in the skin was suspect this year. And I think one of the things that I tried to do was get through fermentation as fast as possible, meaning maximize the extraction of the color and the flavor and get out of Dodge, keep the press fraction separate, meaning just most of the wine that I'm pretty confident will make it into the bottle in a couple of years was all free run, no pressing at all. So what was pressed, I kept separate, and whether I ended up adding that. I love the depth and the concentration that comes through in some of the pressed fractions, but whether I end up adding that to the free run, I don't know, Nan. I don't know yet. You know, it's just, I'm really glad I made that decision to keep things separate. I found that there are big differences in the testing. But I also know that we are only just now exploring, really starting to do the research that's needed to explore what are the various aspects of smoke taint and what can you do to change that or to at least mitigate that. And there's a whole world in front of us as far as what we're going to find out about that. We just brought home a set of samples today from one of our local labs. They want our tasting group to evaluate their fining trials, and we'll find out a whole lot more. And we're going to need to, because unfortunately, fire continues to be in our future. We're still, as you all know, we're in the worst drought since 1976 right now. So Australia, they are definitely, you know, a lot of people sent their grape samples to Australia this year because the Aussies are arguably, you know, moving ahead rapidly on this, but so are our labs. There are labs in Canada, there are local ETS labs and the labs in Australia between all of those labs, and there are labs in Europe that are working on it as well. So we're gonna end up learning a lot about this, and hopefully a lot of people did not harvest grapes this year because the smoke was incredibly intense. A lot of people, there's suspicion that a lot of people didn't pull grapes this year or reneged on their contracts because they had cellars full of Cabernet Sauvignon. It happened to a friend of mine, just whoosh, sorry, we're not buying your 60 tons of Cabernet, prime Oakville Cabernet, sorry. But overall, I think, and that's the downside, that's the nasty side of all of this. But, and nobody, I would say very few people who were in the position of buying grapes and having to also pay for processing at a place, a custom crush facility like mine, did that. If they had a chance to get to, you know, legitimately, they were concerned that they might have to pay for grapes and for processing of grapes, of wine that they might not be able to put in the bottle. So it's going to be interesting to see, Nancy and everybody. It's going to be a long term, but I can guarantee you, nobody I know is going to put a wine in the bottle that you're not 100% happy with. I'd love for my 2020s to be like my 18s, because the 18s were gorgeous and so were the 20s. I mean, wait till you taste the whites. The early whites from 2020 are just spectacular. And so if we can get through this next year and a half of figuring out the best, you know, how everything is, we might have in total surprise, we might have a quite a beautiful vintage on our hands.
We'll see. I want to jump in just a couple questions that made it to the chat box, and one of them leads us right onto our third wine. And everyone, this is John. Say hi to John.
I'm either Julie's husband or this is a home invasion. I'm not sure which. I've just been sitting over here in the corner enjoying a nice glass of Croatian Pinot Blanc. And I can tell you that after having gone through about half a bottle, I can honestly say that life here with Julie is just totally nuts. It's nuts. The whole thing about listening to the accountant, I just was laughing. I had my mouth covered. It was silly. Like she would tear out. When I first met Julie, I actually believed that she might sell the property and move into St. Helena so she wouldn't have to drive her kids into town all the time. And then of course it turns out that you would have to like drag her kicking and screaming from this property. So the idea that she would ever pull out the Zinfandel, it's hilarious. I don't know. She's such a comedian. It's just crazy. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying the show.
I am enjoying the show. I'm enjoying the wines. I hope everyone else is enjoying the wines too. One of the questions that came up, Julie, and this is great when we're talking about kind of putting the best juice in the bottle. So John was asking, do you focus year to year on consistency, or do you focus on making the best wine you can with the grapes that you have? And then, so that's to what would you answer to that question?
It definitely making that vintage.
Yeah.
If I was making 20,000 cases, I would be concerned with getting something on that supermarket shelf that was more consistent year to year. I'm not as concerned about that. I'm much more, from the very beginning, I wasn't making wine. I had been marketing wine and selling wine, and 20 years of that. And then this man came into my life and said, well, why don't you just start making wine and I can help? And I said, what? And at first I hired 3 winemakers to learn, to kind of teach what the possibilities were here in this little vineyard, hence Tres Sabores, 3 flavors, 3 tastes of terroir. We did that, sold 3 packs, horizontal 3 packs for 4 years. In the meantime, started to learn more about the vineyard and more about actually not only drinking, but making the wine from this place. And it became clearer that the goal was going to be looking at what each vintage brought rather than trying to make something consistent. Plus, a single vineyard, you just don't have that much of a repertoire to draw from. I'm not saying that Frog's Leap does this, but I'll pick on Frog's Leap because I know Frog's Leap. And it's like, at the time that I started taking more and more and more of these grapes, this vineyard was one of 5 Zinfandel vineyards that Frog's Leap was making into its Zinfandel. Its Zinfandel essentially was a blend of 5 different vineyards of Zinfandel, and that was a beautiful thing. It still is, just not without mine. But it's there you can work towards blending that is a little bit more for vintage to vintage consistency. So you have a style. Here you always, though, fight against a bit of a house style. That's what was interesting, both interesting and challenging about this year, is that I had to basically, right? I mean, we kind of gave up a lot, right? I mean, we gave up a lot about what we had come to be doing with this fruit or with other fruit that we were working with to achieve a vintage. And I think we have achieved a vintage, but it's going to be, it'll be what it is. Once again, this time of the year, it's still too young to really know what the vintage was. I'm not sophisticated enough as a winemaker at all to be able to say, this is going to be this or this or this or this, for as far as looking at what the vintage is going to be. Right now, I've got my fingers crossed.
Let me just share. So you're talking about changes in the vintage because of the fire, basically.
Yeah.
So this was nuts. I know I use that word a lot.
I'm nuts, you're nuts.
But honestly, the very first day of harvest at this vineyard this year, this extra guys showed up, they started picking, they were out there for about a half an hour. All of a sudden there was lightning everywhere. Everybody got back in their cars for about 45 minutes. The lightning stopped. They started picking again, and within 30 minutes, 3 enormous piers of smoke appeared along and beyond the eastern ridge lines here. And I can tell you that although you couldn't smell the smoke at that point, to have that happen on the first day of harvest, after going through 2017, where it happened 2/3 of the way through harvest, my heart just immediately sank. It was like, we can't even start harvest without a sense that you just knew there was going to be fire everywhere. So yeah, it pretty much changed. It pretty much changed everything.
So you adapt. It is farming, right? I mean, for all its hoopla, this is a blue collar community full of laborers and people who are working the soil, who are very skilled at what they do and have a lot of history doing that. And so, a lot of the shift this year was towards safety already because of COVID. It's safety, it's distancing. how do you pick grapes in 90-degree heat with a mask on? And just so you know, the whole emphasis for this entire year shifted almost from the very beginning, because we were just finishing pruning when COVID hit. So we were already into a different phase, and then the fires just added to it. But I think you know, that's why we've all been so appreciative of your support, for sure. Can we talk about does anybody have any comments about the Zinfandel though? Any?
Oh, well, there was a question about Por Qué No, about, and at the end, yeah. So Paul was saying that he saw that you have 1% Petit Verdot in here, and he was curious about what 1% can possibly do in a wine.
Yes, well, you all know why they use Petit Verdot, and you know, Nancy, you guys would have, right? I mean, it's because it gives it that poke. It's blueberry minerality, intensity. We don't need necessarily that in California, but I swear this one barrel of Petit Verdot, and this year it's actually one barrel of, not even quite a barrel of Petit Verdot from some good friends in Pope Valley. 2019, actually from Clark Cladone Vineyards, if you know that beautiful Cabernet Sauvignon, where they let me have about not even half a ton of their Petit Verdot in 19, and we're like, what are we going to do, and can we really use this, because it was so intense. And then we put it into this blend, and it just gave us the accent point. It was that, you know, that just maybe not the exclamation, but definitely the accent. And it just sort of helped make it gel. And I guess that's the only way I can talk about it. I've tried to make Petit Verdot on its own. It's not as predictable. It's definitely got some intensity to it. It can be very bitter, or too much. You know, too much. It's one of those things where too much goes a long way. Well, this was just, I think this worked out really well. I want to tell you where the label for this came from, for those of you who don't know, which is fun. It was originally a collection of cocktail napkins, hand woven cocktail napkins from Oaxaca, and this was the one that we embroidered with Por Qué No. It was another accident, kind of like this is back in 2000. The 3 winemaker project was well underway, second year, and I realized, well, we have some wine left over. Not everybody, Mother Nature's not perfect for this block of land, and we would have expected to get 175 cases out of this. Well, we had a little bit more, and then there was I brought in a lot of blending wine from here and from Frog's Leap, and not all of it was used, and or none of it was, you know, we just had different odd lots. And I'm like, what are we going to do with this? And my winemakers said, well, let's just blend it together and see what happens. And so we all just kind of went, why not? And then we all kind of just went, ¿por qué no? And at that time, remember 2000, for those of you who remember back, there wasn't a whole lot of activity in the market in red blends. And so it was practically unheard of in those days to blend Petit Syrah and Cabernet, for example. That happens a lot now. You might not know about it. It happens a lot, just like Petit Syrah into Pinot Noir. But it wasn't happening a lot. So it was really fun to have a blend that just sort of came together really totally spontaneously. So if the Zin is my jazz club, this is my salsa party on stage with the marimbas. Well, so whatever these are. But marimbas are like that. Salt and pepper shakers. Yeah. So this is go out and get a mushroom. This is go out and get a mushroom pizza and don't worry about it. You know. If you have 3 golden retrievers, that's what happens at any one moment. I'm sorry, it's coyote walk. But the inspiration for this just continues to be in terms of impact of fire, I did not make a 2017 because one of the vineyards that up in Calistoga where I get my Petit Syrah and until a couple of years ago did get substantial Cabernet for the project because it was making a lighter, fruitier, lower bricks cab, and it was great for this. And we basically lost the vineyard to not to fire per se, but to smoke in 2017. So I didn't make a 2017. So I thought this was going to be a real change. I made a tiny bit of 18, and then this, to be completely transparent, this is about half wine that I made and half wine that I sourced. I sourced a little bit more Zinfandel and a little bit of Petit Syrah. But some of the wine actually is sourced then from an area that we're going to a lot with Pickpool, among other things that John and I are collaborating on these days. And we're going up to the Sierra Nevada foothills where we see a lot of promise, higher altitude grapes and grapes grown at higher altitude, and also some fun for us because we both have long-standing roots in the Sierra foothills. So kind of fun going up there and experimenting. So if you want to know more, I hope you'll go on to our website and see a little bit more of what we're producing these days and having some fun with too.
So I have no idea why my panda is back, you guys. I'm sorry. But Anne's just saying she loves the Zin. It has the boysenberry chocolate, etc. fruit that I love without being excessive. Lael's just saying that she loves hearing you talk about Zinfandel, which is great. John loves the barbecue sauce, and Nancy loved the new whites from the foothills. And I just want to I wanted to point out, I know we're at 6 o'clock, but Julie, if you have a minute, if anyone wants to jump on the microphone and ask some questions, or if you're ready to go, it's all. Yeah,
absolutely. Please do. I will say about the barbecue sauce, John, when did you actually taste the barbecue sauce when we, where's John? I'm looking for John on the screen. Did you actually taste the barbecue sauce when we, John Gates, when we had it? My wines, like I said, we've had some ups and downs. Fires seem to be in my life. In 2005, all my wines were in a warehouse that was torched by an arsonist, and I lost all of my wines and bottled wines. And so I made barbecue sauce from the wine that I extracted from destroyed bottles. I'm thinking of doing that again. I have some smoke tainted wine I need to do something with this year. So I've got a source of one of the hearts of the ingredients of the barbecue sauce was organic pomegranate concentrate from Turkey. And I've recently found some organic pomegranate concentrate from the West Coast. So I think I'm on my way to making another barbecue sauce. Lemons into lemonade, right? It's darn good with Por Qué No too, that barbecue sauce. So
I'm just going to chime in here. I'm going to chime in here and say that when that happened, I actually had a group of travelers up in the Napa Valley in Sonoma, and we had planned a day in the vineyard with Julie. And I remember opening the paper, in the bottom half was a story about the fire, and Julie was the poster child, and Arturo, and I called her and I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. And, are we still coming? And she's like, I said, we can cancel if you want. She's like, no, I want you to, I want normal here. So we went and picked grapes with our group and that kind of thing. Later, I don't know, it was maybe a year later. I don't know how long it took for you to shake the wine loose out of the bond of TTA. But Julie came down with a case of the spoiled wine, and she got it out of hock with the agreement that she would add a certain amount of salt to whatever she used, and that would like de-alcoholize it or something like that. So she came down back when I had the kitchen, some of you remember, in Laguna Canyon, and basically worked with my chef, Rob, at the time.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and basically she had an idea, so she brought her Meyer lemons, all this organic stuff, her Meyer lemons, her peppers, her pomegranates, I forget what else you brought, and of course the wine. And they worked on it in my kitchen and came up with kind of like the formula that was then given to the production company to make. And so we sold it, and she called it fire roasted Zinfandel barbecue sauce. And we sold it until there was none of it left.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic.
Well, I've still got that recipe. You know, one of the key, chili pepper, bay, Aleppo pepper. I still got all those spices. Aleppo chili pepper. I mean, you just smell this, and this just says Zinfandel barbecue, everything else. It's just, yeah, I know.
Just bring it through. Zoom over it.
It's wonderful. Cinnamon. Oh my gosh, it was sort of like a variation on the theme of five spice powder, but yeah, thank you. I forgot, Nancy. I'm sorry. I should have attributed the whole brainstorm to being able to cook in your wonderful kitchen and try to figure it out what could be possible.
It was your idea. We just provided the chef and the facilities. It was pretty fun.
Later on, I mean, everybody thought I was totally crazy. Like John says, I guess I'm nuts, but I'm thinking of doing it again. If you all get a note in the mail saying, would you like to go fund me? Well, you actually can get a barbecue sauce. As you know, a lot of fund me is very altruistic. Well, this is, hey, no, you get a bottle of barbecue sauce.
Send it to me when you have it ready, and I'll send it out to everyone else, and they can all jump on. And I think that'll be great. Obviously, we're selling it pretty well right now. Angela has a question. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Excellent.
Hey, thank you for having us. Ange got us all invited here. We really appreciate you having us on. My question was, what is your favorite memory or experience in your years running the vineyard?
Well, Nancy's, having Nancy at the vineyard is truly one of my favorite experiences, waking up and them being so, you know, they were almost humming their the mantras of learning all about wine, and sitting down at the end of the day and having some rosé was truly one of my most favorite things. I think the other thing was early on, it was kind of a hysterical experience. My first husband and I, when we moved here, one of our children was 1 and one was 3, and we had this grand plan to the family Williams goes out in the vineyard to prune, and we had one in a backpack and we had one with new boots on, and you know, the first thing is that the one in the backpack gets poked in the head, and then the one with the boots on takes off the boots and starts running around wildly in the cover crop and gets totally soaked. And you know, it's sort of like you just knew that you really couldn't plan for anything, that you could just kind of have to give it up and have some fun with it, you know. It's just kind of you just have to kind of give it up and go with it. And I'm not saying that I've been less than serious about this place, but there are plenty of serious things that drive me nuts, but it's that I don't do very well at all. But it's been kind of fun to be able to respond spontaneously to circumstances like the fire, or like a very cold season for the rosé, or like my crazy husband bringing home spontaneously 7 tons of a grape that he had never heard of, or that I had ever heard of either, Saint Laurent. Hi, honey, I'm home. I've got, well, good, John. Well, what are you bringing home today? Well, 7 tons of Saint Laurent. What's that? I have no idea. How much did it cost, John? You know, it's like, so it's responding to the impetus to keep going, I guess, is what? John says love and osmosis. That's always been my mantra, I guess. Love and osmosis. How did you learn how to make wine? Well, love and osmosis. You know, it's what?
Good, thank you.
Oh, I also, Nancy provided me with a gift, 2 of the most amazing punch down tools. Miguel was not using that punch down tool. We need to this year, Nancy, we need to get a better picture with him using the right tool. But Nancy presented me with these. She had taken 2 huge commercial punch down tools. It's not that one, unfortunately, but it's the same idea.
They were potato mashers.
They're potato
They were
mashers.
potato mashers.
And so she had special handles put on. And this day, if you come up in September, we'll put you to work with the potato mashers mashing down, 3 or 4 or more times a day. You have to, the CO2 of fermentation pushes all the berries up to the surface. They create kind of a pretty hardcore mattress and of grapes. You have to punch it down. And those potato mashers are particularly wonderful as far as doing that. So it's great that way. So that's another great memory. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Another great memory.
Any other questions from anyone? Anne is saying just good to see you, if you see that in the chat box. Anyone else have a burning question for Julie or John back in the distance there? Yeah. So I do want to put a little pitch in for as Julie was saying. I know I was very excited to do sort of this taste of Zinfandel just because I think it's a really wonderful varietal. But they do a whole lot more there. Like she was just talking about, they have this amazing grape called Saint Laurent. They are doing a peak pool. This was the first year of the peak pool. Is that correct?
Second year of peak pool.
Second year of peak pool, which for those of you who don't know is this incredible little white grape from the south of France that's just absolutely delicious and extraordinary, and now is apparently grown in the Sierra foothills, and I had no idea either. So it's such an exploration and it's such an adventure. And the best way to taste them is obviously to go up there and sit on their beautiful outdoor little tasting deck and enjoy them with the gorgeous view of Napa Valley right in front of you. So that would be my recommendation. But I'll be sure to send the link also with the website. You can buy wine straight off her website as well, all of that good stuff. And obviously just go visit because her dogs are super cute. And so are her sheep and her goat.
So are the sheep and the goats, yeah. Our goat is named Rosie because she eats roses. I just want to thank you. It's been wonderful to come full circle with you, Sasha and Nancy and everybody out there. And all of these visits where people have let us into your kitchens or your dining rooms or your libraries or your wine cellars have been quite marvelous. And tonight has been absolutely lovely. And we'd love to feel your energy up here and welcome you here. We're pretty easy to get to, and we're maybe a place to discover if you've been kind of avoiding Napa. Let us be your, I guess my bottom line is let us be your concierge to help you discover some places in Napa that are doing some really, really fun things and are a little off the beaten track and fun and highest quality. So we'd love to help show you the way. I'd love to have you back. I hope you all stay safe and we'll get through this and are not too. Oh, I also wanted to say thank you to High Time so much for helping to make some of the wine acquisition help. Their support, it was really wonderful. How are we going to do this? Well, there's a relationship with Sasha and High Time. Well, great. Well, they take it on because they've never carried our wine before because always Nancy and Sasha bought the wine. So they did this time. And so thank you for patronizing them as well. We appreciate that. They're good people. They always have been around for a long time. They know what they're doing. So.
Okay, we're getting a lot of thank you guys. Well, thank you. I think, we've got our requisite sort of 15-minute plus joined time, which is wonderful. Julie, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for these lovely wines as well. So yes, and thank you, John, for being there as well.
Thank you guys. It's been a great partnership with this guy, this kiddo, right? And we'd love to see you. So thank you very, very much. And you guys take care and enjoy wine, take out or no. You can put your slippers on and have a glass, and or just go out and have the best takeout or cooking ever. I'm going to finish up the recipe for mole tonight, and it's yeah,
You can send it to me and I can send it to people. Oh, is that a thing?
It's actually on our website. There are two
Brilliant.
moles. One is a dark and one is a cheat of a mole, but it actually tastes really, really good. The other, the one from the Hugo's restaurant group in Houston, is the real thing, and it was a challenge. I had mole all over the kitchen, and as John can attest, I did. But it was great fun to make it once. So now I'm gonna just gonna go to Pueblo for more mole. But so it's a food group, and it goes with everything that I make. So it's kind of fun. So it's nice to conquer that. Star anise and guajillo chiles, and yum yum. So
Yes.
so go eat something great and have some fun with the rest of the wine that you have so kindly acquired for tonight's tasting. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks everyone. Happy Friday. Everyone have a fantastic weekend. Yes. Weekend. You guys are all fantastic. I will see many of you next week. Julie and John, I hope to see you again soon as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys.